The Jester Trilogy. A dark comedy. A SpongeBob parody of Joker, Folie, Deux, and The Dark Knight. Part 1. The Jester. Squidward Tentacles the Octopus is a fast food worker and party clown at the Krusty Krab restaurant, which is owned by the greedy and wealthy crab, Mr. Krabs. The SpongeBob SquarePants also works as a fast food worker at the restaurant, where he often annoys his coworker and neighbor Squidward. Despite their differences, both SpongeBob and Squidward share a love of Batman comic books, with SpongeBob being a fan of the fictional bat hero Batman and Squidward being a fan of the fictional clown villain Joker. Despite his low-paying job, Squidward dreams of becoming a comedic talk show host, just like his octopus rival, the famous comedic talk show host Squilliam Fancy's son. Squidward is a lonely bachelor who lives alone in a crime-ridden Bikini Bottom, a sea city divided by class conflict, especially between the poor working class full of clownfish and the rich wealthy class full of crabs. Squidward suffers from a neurological disorder, pseudobulbar effect, which causes him to have random, uncontrollable laughing fits, causing him to be a social outcast among sea creatures. To deal with his disorder, Squidward visits the psychiatrist Peter Plankton, or P. Plankton, who is really the tiny plankton, Sheldon Plankton, rival of Mr. Krabs and owner of the Poor Chum Bucket restaurant, the unsuccessful rival company to the Krusty Krab. Unknown to Squidward, Plankton is a fraud and not a real psychiatrist, so he only pretends to give Squidward cliché therapy advice and fake placebo drugs to help his mental condition. Plankton really wants to simply hypnotize Squidward to get him to tell Plankton the Krabby Patty secret formula, the secret to the success of the Krusty Krab, but his hypnosis always fails. After Squidward is mugged by octopus criminals while taking the bus home, Squidward goes to the city docks and finds a harpoon handgun dumped by clownfish criminals to defend himself. Squidward pursues a relationship with his neighbor, the female gray squid incidental, and invites her to see his upcoming joke routine at a comedy club. The clown Squidward accidentally drops his harpoon handgun while performing a show for fish children at the Krusty Krab, causing Mr. Krabs to fire him. While riding home on the bus and still wearing his clown makeup, he is mocked and assaulted by 3 drunk crab and lobster businessmen from Bikini Bottom's Water Wall Street. Using his harpoon handgun, Squidward fatally shoots 2 of them in self-defense and murders the 3rd crustacean as he attempts to flee. Their friend, billionaire crab owner of the Krusty Krab, Squidward's former boss and mayoral candidate Eugene Krabs, condemns the unsolved killings on TV, but anti-rich clownfish supporters begin sporting clown masks in the killer's image. Realizing he should also run for city mayor against Mr. Krabs so he can legally nationalize the private Krusty Krab company and can use the discontented poor clownfish as his support base, Plankton begins his own anti-rich campaign and falsely promises wealth redistribution. Since he no longer needs Squidward, Plankton reveals their therapy sessions and the placebo medications were a sham to Squidward, who realizes he never had a real therapist or medication to help with his mental laughing condition. Incidental attends Squidward's stand-up comedy routine, which fails due to his disorder and his jokes falling flat. 2 fat tuna fish detectives question Squidward about his potential involvement in the unsolved murders of the 3 rich crabs and lobsters, claiming they received a tip from his former coworker and neighbor SpongeBob that Squidward brought a harpoon handgun to work that day and was fired for it. Squidward denies involvement and demands they get a search warrant if they want to search his home, causing the detectives to label him as SUS and promise he'll be hearing more from them. When SpongeBob visits Squidward to ask if he wants to donate to Mr. Krabs' mayor campaign to make Bikini Bottom great, rich, and crime-free again, Squidward demands to know what SpongeBob told the detectives. SpongeBob reveals he simply told them Squidward had a harpoon handgun, but so do many other sea creatures since Bikini Bottom is full of crime. The angry Squidward assaults SpongeBob, who is unable to defend himself until SpongeBob's pet and friend Gary the snail arrives and growls at Squidward, causing Squidward to stop and demand that SpongeBob never speak to him again. Realizing he needs to learn self-defense, SpongeBob signs up for karate classes with the Asian carp fish, Master Udon, at his dojo. Meanwhile, Squidward's rival, popular comedic talk show host Squilliam, presents clips of Squidward's failed and embarrassing performance at the comedy club on his show and mockingly calls him a clown and a jester, much to Squidward's distress. As his laughing condition worsens from lack of treatment, Squidward visits Wacko Asylum, where he reads Plankton's psychiatrist files on him, which state his laughing condition results from his octopus mother accidentally dropping Squidward too much on his head as a baby since he had an abnormally big head. A distraught Squidward goes home with Incidental, but when he hugs her for comfort and looks in the mirror, Squidward sees himself only hugging his own pillow. Squidward finally realizes his lack of placebo medications resulted in his hallucinations of the imaginary female Squid Incidental. Due to the fame caused by the viral clips of his failed comic performance, Squidward is invited onto Squilliam's show. Squidward decides to bring the harpoon gun, intending to send Squilliam to fish Jesus on live TV as revenge for his public mockery of Squidward. While getting ready in clown makeup, Squidward is visited by one of the tuna fish detectives who has a search warrant. The clown-faced Squidward happily invites the fish detective in and leads him to a trap door, causing the fish detective to fall into the booby trap and get turned into fried fish. Realizing he is free as a new clown criminal, Squidward happily dances like a madman down the long stairs in the ghetto of Bikini Bottom. The other tuna fish detective investigating Squidward arrives and pursues him onto a submarine public subway filled with clownfish protesters. Squidward incites a brawl between a crab and a clownfish, during which the tuna detective shoots and kills a clownfish protester in self-defense. The other clownfish protesters, in turn, beat the detective while Squidward maniacally laughs and escapes. As fish cops arrive on the scene after Squidward's escape, the beaten and now crippled fish detective is hospitalized with severe injuries. At the studio of Squilliam's TV show, Squidward asks Squilliam to introduce him as the Jester, a reference to his earlier mockery. As the show broadcasts live, Squidward tells morbid jokes, confesses to the murders of the 3 rich crabs and tuna fish detective, rants about societal neglect of the crazy and poor downtrodden, especially clownfish, who are mocked as nothing but clowns by other sea creatures, and berates Squilliam for ridiculing him. After a final joke saying he will give Squilliam exactly what he deserves, Squidward fatally shoots Squilliam in the pecker. Squidward is arrested by fish cops and clownfish riots, inspired by Squidward's inciting speech against the rich and powerful class of crabs, erupt across the sea city. Looters in a clown car crash into the police car carrying Squidward and free him. Other clownfish rioters loot the Krusty Krab and overwhelm the fish cops and security protecting Mr. Krabs. Meanwhile, one clownfish rioter, a crazy clownfish wearing a clown mask, corners, shoots, and kills the fleeing Mr. Krabs and his 2 biggest political supporters, Harold and Margaret SquarePants, the parents of SpongeBob, in the alley behind the restaurant after telling them he will give them exactly what they deserve. SpongeBob arrives on the scene and uses his new karate skills to fight off some of the clownfish rioters, but he is too late to save his sponge parents and Mr. Krabs and is forced to flee. The freed clown Squidward, now the Jester, stands atop the crashed police car, dances to the cheers of the clownfish crowd, and smears the blood on his face into a creepy smile. While Squidward has finally embraced the clown villain persona of the Jester, inspired by his favorite fictional Joker comic book villain, SpongeBob realizes he will need to train himself to become a bat vigilante hero inspired by his favorite fictional comic book hero Batman. Now that Mr. Krabs is dead, Plankton is voted as the new mayor of Bikini Bottom and SpongeBob becomes the wealthy inheritor of the Krusty Krab Company, setting Plankton and SpongeBob on a path of conflict over ownership of the company and its secret Krabby Patty secret formula. Sometime later, while incarcerated at Wacko Asylum, Squidward maniacally laughs to himself about a joke during a session with his new therapist, the pufferfish Mrs. Puff. He declines telling it to her, claiming she would not understand it since Squidward is merely laughing about how he got revenge on Squilliam, Mr. Krabs, and SpongeBob all on the same night of the clownfish riots, which were eventually suppressed by the Mermaid and Merman National Guard troops sent to Bikini Bottom by the merman ruler of the Seven Seas, King Neptune. The now insane Squidward imagines singing the song That's Life, imagines popping Mrs. Puff with a hidden needle, and imagines escaping the asylum as fish guards chase after him. Part 2, Jesters, Madness for Two. An animated Looney Tunes and Silly Symphonies cartoon, which is entitled Me and My Youngin' Shadow, is played before movies in movie theaters across Bikini Bottom. In the cartoon, Daffy Duck, dressed as the clown persona of the Joker and known as the Quacker, is impersonated by his duck shadow, who acts violently and takes his place to perform a musical number of What the World Needs Now Is Love for a TV show, then merges back together with the trickster clown Daffy Duck before the three little pigs led by Porky Pig and dressed as cops along with Donald Duck, dressed as the Bat vigilante persona of the Batman and known as the Duck Knight, arrive and brutally attack and arrest him. The octopus Squidward Tentacles is in custody at Wet Wacko Asylum, a prison-like, abusive asylum full of corrupt and brutal fatfish guards led by Bubble Base and located on the island of Bikini Atoll above the sea city of Bikini Bottom. Squidward is awaiting criminal trial for the crimes he committed as the Jester, including his murders of the three Krabs, Tuna Fish Detective, and Squilliam Fancy Son on live TV, as well as his incitement of the clownfish riots that led to the deaths of Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob's parents, Harold and Margaret SquarePants. Although the clownfish killer of Mr. Krabs and the SquarePants parents of SpongeBob was captured and also incarcerated in Wet Wacko Asylum after the riots ended, nobody knows he was the killer, and they assume he is simply one of many of the captured clownfish rioters. While imprisoned at Wet Wacko Asylum, the crazy clownfish killer with no known name, a John Doe in the asylum system, creepily smiles and chuckles to himself for no reason, often bites the fat fish guards who need many of them to subdue him, and often creepily watches and admires Squidward from afar. Squidward's squid lawyer plans to argue that Squidward suffers from dissociative identity disorder and that his jester personality is responsible for the crimes. At a music therapy session, Squidward meets Squilvia, and it is love at first sight. Squilvia claims that she sees dead people, including the pirate ghost of the Flying Dutchman, resulting in her being labeled insane and incarcerated in Wacko Asylum after having a public mental breakdown. Squilvia also expresses her admiration for Jester's crimes and persona, especially his public murder of the rich snob Squilliam Fancy Son on live TV. As their relationship develops, Squidward and Squilvia begin imagining life as a stage musical with them in the spotlight through their linked insanity. They both have the same dream of themselves dressed as clowns, free from the asylum, and dancing by the moon at night to the song Dancing in the Moonlight. After meeting her, Squidward wildly dances and sings the love song, For Once in My Life, like a madman in the asylum, causing the annoyed fatfish guards led by Bubble Base to brutally beat him and forcefully medicate and administer electroshock therapy to Squidward, who cries and laughs as they do so. During a film screening of the movie Joker at the asylum, Squilvia starts a fire using a hidden match and her squid ink. She and Squidward flee the burning building, dance, and sing together until they are caught by the fatfish guards. Squidward is deprived of food by the guards and placed in a dark dungeon of the asylum for solitary confinement. Squilvia visits him to say she is being released from the asylum to prevent him from being a bad influence on her, but she promises to attend his criminal trial. They have awkward and short sex before she leaves. During an interview with television personality, the Fish Perch Perkins, who mocks Squidward's likely insanity defense strategy in his upcoming trial, Squidward slaps him across the face to shut him up, tells him that Squidward is not alone in his madness and need for love anymore in life, and sings to Squilvia the love song Bewitched through the TV screen, deepening their love for each other. On the day of the trial, Assistant District Attorney, the Southern Fish lawyer Richard A. Bottom feeder calls psychiatrists as professional experts who dismiss Squidward's claims of insanity and instead argue he is simply faking his laughing condition and psychosis so he can be freed through the insanity defense. Squidward is embarrassed at the trial and gets angry with his squid lawyer, who does his best but fails to make a compelling case that social conditions and mental illness from childhood neglect resulted in Squidward becoming the insane jester, making Squidward not morally responsible for his crimes. During the testimony, Squidward and Squilvia, who is present in the court audience, share loving looks and blow kisses to each other. They both have hallucinations of being dressed as clown jesters, dancing and singing the song Send in the Clowns together, and using a harpoon gun and the judge's gavel to attack the judge, jury, and guards to escape to freedom. Outside the trial, many clownfish protesters fight with fish cops guarding the courthouse. The clownfish protesters cover their faces with clown makeup and masks. They view Squidward as a righteous vigilante against the corrupt rich and powerful crab classes of Bikini Bottom, which is still full of economic inequality and class conflict due to budget cuts in social services. Despite being elected as new mayor to improve economic equality, Mayor Plankton has simply ignored the suffering of the poor clownfish class and has focused his energy on nationalizing the Krusty Krab Company to secure ownership of the Krabby Patty's secret formula. In the same courthouse where Squidward's trial occurs, there is a civil trial for ownership of the Krusty Krab Company as its new owner. The now wealthy SpongeBob SquarePants argues his case that the company is not a monopoly and should not be nationalized like Mayor Plankton desires. Much to Plankton's displeasure, SpongeBob wins the legal case and retains private ownership of the Krusty Krab Company and Krabby Patty's secret formula. As the days of the trial continue, Squidward is transported in police submarines from the asylum on Bikini Atoll to the Bikini Bottom courthouse in the Sea City. When Squilvia visits Squidward, she urges him to fire his ineffective lawyer and to dress up like the jester clown and represent himself so he can win his trial by the insanity defense by acting crazy. She also reveals she is pregnant with their octopus baby from their night of lovemaking. Squidward agrees to her trial plan and cries tears of joy as she sings the love song Close to You to Squidward, who gazes at her with immense love and sings back to her. At the trial the next day, Squidward finally fires his ineffective squid lawyer and represents himself as the jester. As his own attorney, Squidward wears a lawyer suit, but he also covers his face in clown makeup and uses a southern lawyer accent to mock his enemy lawyer Richard Bottomfeeder. Bottomfeeder brings two key witnesses to testify against Squidward, who also cross-examines and mocks them. The first witness is the surviving crippled tuna fish detective whose injuries from the clown protesters on the submarine subway win him great sympathy with the jury. The second witness is SpongeBob himself, who testifies how Squidward's incitement of the clownfish riots led to the tragic deaths of his best friend Mr. Krabs and his sponge parents, Harold and Margaret SquarePants. During his testimony, SpongeBob imagines being a bat costume wearing vigilante, the Bat Sponge, and imagines fighting and beating Squidward the Jester and the unknown clownfish who killed his sponge parents. After their testimony and replaying the horrific video of Squidward the Jester shooting Squilliam in the pecker to kill him on live TV, Bottomfeeder rests his case. Visibly affected by the testimony, Squidward offers no real defense. Instead, Squidward the Jester tells dark and bad jokes and gives a speech on how he is really the Jester, who is somebody and who has many supporters and media fame, unlike Squidward Tentacles, who was a loser and a nobody whom nobody cared about. In his speech, Squidward also mocks the fat, stupid, and abusive guards at Wet Wacko Asylum. Squidward says the fat cat crabs who died as a result of his crimes, especially Mr. Krabs as well as the rich snob Squilliam, got exactly what they deserved for treating clownfish and neglected sea creatures like Squidward himself like trash. However, when SpongeBob yells that his sponge parents did not deserve to die and asks how Squidward would feel if he was left as an orphan, Squidward is momentarily left speechless before he holds back tears as he remembers his neglect by his own octopus parents as a child that resulted in his involuntary laughing condition and mental illness before he yells that sometimes the innocent are killed simply because the world is a cruel dark joke that only insane laughter can cope with. Squidward concludes his speech by saying that the law can imprison, abuse, and kill him as Squidward, but that he and his followers are already free as fellow chaotic and anarchist jesters against the corrupt establishment. Returning to the asylum, Squidward is taken to the showers by head guard Bubble Bass and many fatfish guards in retaliation for his mockery of them on national television. Bubble Bass orders the fish guards to waterboard Squidward to torture him. Squidward maniacally laughs and cries as he barely survives the waterboarding. During his closing argument in court the following day, the broken and traumatized Squidward finally renounces his jester persona as nothing but a fantasy, taking full responsibility for his homicidal actions and even apologizing to SpongeBob for causing the death of his sponge parents. Enraged at this, Squilvia storms out of the courthouse, and the jury finds Squidward guilty of the several murders and incitement of the clown riots. As the fish foreperson reads the verdict, Squidward laughs and cries like a madman since he will be given the death penalty and will never reunite with Squilvia. Suddenly, a bomb set off by a random crazy clownfish protester explodes outside the courthouse, injuring numerous court attendees, killing the fish judge and jury by turning them into fried fish, and even traumatizing Richard Bottomfeeder, who survives the blast. In the chaos, two clownfish followers, dressed in literal medieval jester costumes and with clown masks, help the injured but alive Squidward escape. However, Squidward abandons the getaway boat car and flees when he realizes they still want him to become their jester leader to burn down the Sea City in another clownfish riot. While the fish police arrest the two clownfish followers, Squidward barely escapes. With his smeared clown makeup barely covering his face and still wearing his dirty and torn lawyer suit, the freed Squidward wanders through Bikini Bottom City until he finally encounters Squilvia on the same stairs in the ghetto that he once madly danced down. Squidward rushes to Squilvia and urges her to escape with him from Bikini Bottom so they can live happily ever after in love and raise their incoming octopus baby. However, the disillusioned Squilvia reveals she is not pregnant and that Squidward simply shot blanks, says she is no longer in love with Squidward since he is no longer the jester, claims their relationship was merely a fantasy, and sadly sings the song, "That's entertainment," to him. As Squidward cries and begs her to stay, Squilvia says goodbye and leaves him alone. Suddenly, countless police boat cars arrive on the scene and many fish cops arrest and subdue Squidward, who is taken back to Wet Wacko Asylum. The next day, Bubble Bass directs Squidward down an empty dark hallway to meet a supposed visitor for him. The crazy clownfish John Doe, the secret killer of Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob's parents, stops Squidward and tells him a joke about a psychopath who asks a drunk clown at a bar what drink he would like him to buy for him. In the joke, the clown tells the psychopath that he can get him anything since he is buying the drink, causing the psychopath to respond that he will get the clown exactly what he deserves. Suddenly, the crazy clownfish pulls out a sharp hidden fish hook and shanks Squidward, who falls to the floor in agony, imagines Squilvia singing the song "That's Life," gives a final smile and sheds a final tear, and finally dies. The crazy clownfish, laughing hysterically, carves a Glasgow smile on his own face. The Glasgow smile clownfish has killed and usurped Squidward the first jester, and has become the second jester. Part 3. The Bat Sponge. The sea city of Bikini Bottom has been an urban dystopia since the time when the first jester, Squidward Tentacles, made the sea creatures of Bikini Bottom afraid of clowns until he was killed. The killer of Squidward, a former insane clownfish inmate with no known real name and with a Glasgow smile carved on his face, has killed several asylum fatfish guards including Bubble Bass and has escaped from Wet Wacko Asylum. He has taken on the new mantle of the second jester. Meanwhile, the recent inmate Blackbeard the Pirate Ghost, also known as the Flying Dutchman, has also escaped the asylum to spread fear as the new Jester spreads chaos in Bikini Bottom. Using the symbol of the ultimate scary creature of the night, the bat, to strike fear in the hearts of fish criminals each night, SpongeBob SquarePants has become the vigilante known as the Bat Sponge to avenge his sponge parents' tragic deaths from the clownfish riots inspired by Squidward the first Jester. Trained in martial arts by the karate master Fish Master Udon and equipped with the superhero weaponry, vehicle, and gadgets of the retired human superheroes Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, the Bat Sponge is now a one-man army crusading for justice and peace on the streets. The Bat Sponge works to defeat the rise of organized crime supported by the corrupt Mayor Plankton and to stop the influence of the Jesters on the clownfish criminals of Bikini Bottom. Just as there are many bat costume-wearing sea creature vigilante copycats of the Bat Sponge trying to uphold social order, many anarchist and criminal clownfish copycats of the first Jester still exist, ensuring the continued legacy of Squidward tentacles and providing cannon fodder for the second Jester, who uses them as pawns in his scheme to spread anarchy in society. As owner of the wealthy Krusty Krab Company, SpongeBob uses his immense inherited wealth to fund his war on crime. As Mayor Plankton enables the fish mafia to rule over Bikini Bottom with an iron fist, Bat Sponge forges an alliance with Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, Lobster Police Chief Larry the Lobster, and Texan attorney and former lover, the Squirrel Sandy Cheeks. SpongeBob's pet and loyal butler Gary the Snail remains by his side, a lifelong ally and confidant. Richard Bottomfeeder, who put Squidward tentacles on trial, is the new district attorney working to dismantle organized crime. The deceased Squidward tentacles' influence as the first Jester is still felt in Bikini Bottom, even if his legacy has been usurped by the mysterious and villainous clownfish John Doe, causing the second Jester, his killer and successor, to pledge to remind Bikini Bottom that there are always two Jokers in every deck of cards. In Bikini Bottom City, organized crime mafias, operated by Mayor Plankton's extended family of tiny hillbilly plankton relatives, rule the streets. Copycat fish and sponge vigilantes of the Bat Sponge battle with clownfish criminal copycats of the first Jester, and Bat Sponge works to defeat both Plankton's organized crime and the Jester's anarchy. While most mafia fish members, except the powerful but tiny plankton mob bosses who are always pardoned by Mayor Plankton, get sent to prison if convicted, Bikini Bottom's most insane sea creature criminals are still sent to Wacko Asylum, which still has a status for abusing and mistreating its mentally ill inmates. The new second Jester and Flying Dutchman, former inmates at Wacko Asylum, have escaped and have become criminal masterminds in Bikini Bottom. The second Jester has gathered clownfish criminal anarchist followers for himself, the former followers of the now-dead Squidward the first Jester. While the wealthy crabs and middle-class fishes view Bat Sponge as a hero and protector of the innocent from street crime, many clownfish in the working class and poor class view Bat Sponge, whose advanced gadgets suggest his secret identity is wealthy or funded by the wealthy, as an oppressor allied with the corrupt police fish and protecting the property and unfair wealth of the upper crab classes. Many fish citizens disillusioned with the corrupt police and Bat Sponge's vigilantism join the anarchist clownfish criminals or become thugs for the organized crime of the plankton mafia kingpins. Nevertheless, the fear that Bat Sponge has instilled in many sea creatures has deterred many citizens from engaging in crime. One day, a gang of clown mask-wearing clownfish criminals robs a mafia-owned bank, betraying and killing each other for a larger share of the loot until the sole survivor, the new Jester, the escaped clownfish asylum inmate with the Glasgow smile who killed Squidward, reveals himself as the mastermind of the heist and escapes with the money, which he uses to create a custom theatrical purple and green clown suit. Proud of his grotesque Glasgow smile, Jester covers his scarred face with clown makeup and embraces the clown trickster Jester persona created and then rejected by Squidward. The vigilante Bat Sponge wears a dark armored suit resembling a black bat, possesses top physical and mental fitness, has PTSD from his sponge parents' deaths, and uses advanced non-lethal weapons and his martial arts abilities in his street fights with sea creature criminals every night. That sponge is really SpongeBob SquarePants, who has transcended the fears and trauma of his past, shaped by the tragic death of his sponge parents, to become the effective street fighter and crime fighter vigilante restoring law and order in Bikini Bottom, alongside the partially corrupt police. SpongeBob's pet, friend, and butler Gary the Snail still serves and lives with SpongeBob, aiding in his vigilantism, attending to his everyday needs, and keeping his secret as Bat Sponge safe. The new district attorney is the former assistant district attorney Richard Bottomfeeder. Bottomfeeder has PTSD from the court explosion that ended the trial of Squidward Tentacles. A fish who enjoys eating Krabby Patties, Bottomfeeder flips his frozen Lucky Patty like a coin to help him make important decisions. The patty actually only has 2 heads and no tails, so ultimately Richard is making all his decisions based on his own free will. Former lifeguard Larry the Lobster is a good police chief with a strong moral compass, but he is forced to accept crooked fish cops in his squad due to the pervasiveness of Bikini Bottom's corruption under Mayor Plankton. Bat Sponge, Richard, and Larry become allies to eliminate Plankton's organized crime. One night, while fighting the fish members of the mob and copycat vigilante sponges and fish dressed in bat costumes, and using both his Batmobile vehicle, the former invisible boatmobile of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy but now painted black, and his fighting prowess to defeat them, Bat Sponge using a Ghostbusters-like vacuum device to capture and defeat the escaped Flying Dutchman, who uses his fear toxin street drug on one of the scared copycat vigilantes and who sells his fear drugs to Plankton mob bosses on the streets. SpongeBob, the wealthy philanthropist who donated much of his wealth to the public to reduce economic inequality and class conflict, publicly supports Richard as Bikini Bottom's legitimate protector from crime, believing Richard's success will allow him to retire as Bat Sponge and romantically pursue his childhood friend and former adult lover, Texan attorney Sandy Cheeks, despite her currently being in a romantic relationship with her fellow Southern lawyer Richard. Once learning his secret of being Bat Sponge, Sandy could not remain in a romantic relationship with SpongeBob because he could not give up being the Bat Sponge due to the high levels of crime and corruption in Bikini Bottom. The Plankton Mafia bosses, including the most prominent secret mob boss, Mayor Sheldon Plankton, gather to discuss protecting their organizations from the Jester, the police, and the Bat Sponge. The Jester interrupts the meeting, uses a jack-in-the-box bomb strapped to himself as protection and intimidation, and offers to kill Bat Sponge for payment. Mob bosses Dirty Bubble and Man Ray insult Jester as nothing but a freak and promise to put a hit out on him as Jester leaves a Joker card as his calling card before leaving. Later, Jester assassinates the mob bosses Dirty Bubble and Man Ray after Jester fakes his own death, and then ambushes them and their thugs with a surprise fishing hook attack and his own armed crew of clownfish followers at the mob boss's residence. After popping the Dirty Bubble to kill him, and before killing Man Ray by carving a Glasgow smile on his manta ray face, the Jester tells him a false story about how he supposedly got his clownfish facial scars from being caught and mutilated by sadistic human fishermen to instill fear in Man Ray. With the help of the old dynamic duo of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, who provide Bat Sponge with advanced technological devices and non-lethal weapons that aid his war on crime, Bat Sponge wiretaps and records the private calls of all the Plankton mob bosses, revealing their secret crimes and leaking the recordings to the media. The undeniable media leaks finally enable Richard to apprehend the Plankton crime families and many of their fish thugs and to charge them with criminal offenses. Realizing he can no longer pardon his Plankton family mob bosses without risking impeachment, the corrupt Mayor Plankton finally relents and accepts the Jester's offer to be his hired assassin of the Bat Sponge. Although Plankton thinks he can control the Jester, the villain's own fanatical, criminal, and anarchist clownfish followers and his true nihilistic intention to cause all social and moral order to collapse make him an independent and powerful extremist and domestic terrorist beyond Plankton's control. Jester spreads panic when he sends the news media a video of him intimidating and using tickling torture a captured copycat sponge vigilante dressed like Bat Sponge. After using a seagull feather and tickling the captured sponge to the point where the vigilante finally laughs to death, Jester promises more sea creatures will die for every single day that Bat Sponge does not unmask himself and strip himself naked in public to reveal his secret identity and the size of his pecker to the public. As Bat Sponge refuses to negotiate with the terrorist Jester and desperately tries to find his secret hideout, the increasing bodies of many innocent and dead fish and sponge victims of Jester are found with Joker playing cards, clown makeup, and carved Glasgow smiles on their faces as the villains calling cards. Having invented a laughing sauce that makes fish laugh to death as a cruel joke and effective weapon, the Jester targets Richard at a fundraising dinner held by SpongeBob and Poison Sandy with the laughing sauce after shoving a Krabby Patty full of laughing sauce into her mouth. As Sandy laughs uncontrollably, Jester tells Sandy a false story about how he got his facial scars after trying to be tough and shaving without shaving cream. Suddenly, Bat Sponge arrives, fights off the Jester and his clownfish thugs in a brutal fishing hook, and harpoon gunfight and administers medicine that renders Sandy unconscious to prevent her from laughing to death. After the Jester narrowly escapes while Bat Sponge is preoccupied with saving his love Sandy, the villain, then orchestrates the killing of fish jury members involved in the trial of the plankton mob bosses, causing the trials to halt and the public and media to panic and demand the Bat Sponge meet the Jester's demand. Recalling the anarchy of Squidward the first Jester, SpongeBob and Gary agree that the clownfish second Jester is a true nihilist who just wants to watch the sea burn. To cover up his secret approval of the crimes of the Jester, Mayor Plankton plans to have the Jester perform a fake assassination attempt on the mayor's life and a laughing sauce attack on the large fish crowd at the mayor's birthday celebration. Bat Sponge uses his detective skills and forensic technology to retrieve fish fin prints on a fishing hook left by Jester at a crime scene and to find a name associated with them to search for Jester's real identity and location. However, Bat Sponge is lured into a booby trap set by Jester that almost kills him with a planted Jack-in-the-Box bomb and narrowly escapes due to the Jester's intentional red herring planted fin prints. During Mayor Plankton's birthday celebration, many fish start laughing uncontrollably and fall dead with permanent smiles on their faces after eating Krabby Patties poisoned with laughing sauce. Suddenly, the Jester, disguised as a birthday party clown, really shoots and kills Mayor Plankton using a harpoon gun and eliminating the final Plankton Mafia boss threatening his power. Following the assassination of Mayor Plankton by the Jester, SpongeBob finally decides to give up the Bat Sponge persona and to reveal his true identity as SpongeBob SquarePants to the public to end the killings. Bat Sponge confronts Richard when the furious and desperate Richard uses a grease shooting gun that can turn fish into fried fish and his lucky frozen patty coin to threaten a captured follower of Jester, the fish hitman Dennis, who has made a threat to Sandy's life. Bat Sponge knocks out Dennis and says the criminal belongs in police custody only, causing Richard to protest that the fish police are too corrupt and in cahoots with the incarcerated plankton mob bosses to trust. Bat Sponge simply condemns Richard's behavior toward the insane inmate, says heroes must not become monsters themselves when fighting monsters, tells him his actions would threaten the legal case against the mob bosses and everything they have fought for if revealed to the public, and orders Richard to hold a press conference so Bat Sponge can turn himself into the police. However, during the conference, Richard instead claims he himself is the Bat Sponge as a result of wearing both a sponge and bat costume. Richard surrenders to fish cops who arrest him for his vigilante confession. The Jester and his clownfish goons arrive in clown boat cars and use bazookas to attack the police boat car convoy led by Police Chief Larry to try to assassinate the police chief and district attorney. The real Bat Sponge arrives in the Bat Boat Mobile and uses its torpedoes to make the clown boat cars crash. The Jester exits his crashed car and uses a large harpoon gun to fire at the hero's vehicle. As the hero's vehicle races toward him, the Jester demands that the Bat Sponge deliberately run him over to kill him. However, Bat Sponge has a strong moral code of never deliberately killing criminals, so he does not become the sole judge, jury, and executioner of them. Instead, the hero fires a fish net out of his vehicle to finally capture the Jester. At the police station holding both the Jester and Major Plankton mob bosses, Bat Sponge interrogates the Jester, who says he finds the hero entertaining and has no intention of killing him. When Bat Sponge questions the villain's motives, Jester claims Fish's moral codes are bad jokes dropped at the first signs of trouble, indicating that Jester views his nihilistic mission in life is to reveal that social order and morality are temporary illusions hiding sea creatures' true dark and easily corruptible natures. Having deduced Bat Sponge's feelings for Sandy, the Jester reveals she and Richard are being held separately in closed Krusty Krab restaurants rigged to explode. Bat Sponge brutally beats and tortures Jester to give him a taste of his own medicine and to obtain information about their whereabouts, causing the Jester to wildly laugh and then willingly force Bat Sponge to choose whom to save by giving him the information of the two separate locations. Bat Sponge races to rescue Sandy, while Police Chief Larry and the other fish officers go after Richard, but they discover the Jester gave their locations in reverse. The explosives detonate, tragically killing Sandy before the police can arrive and severely burning Richard's face on one side and burning one side of his now unlucky patty. The Jester escapes custody after detonating a bomb he implanted in one of his crazy clownfish followers and fellow prisoners to explode the police station. The huge explosion kills the final Major Plankton mob bosses. The Jester and his clownfish followers find and deliberately burn the remaining blood money of the now destroyed mob as the Jester announces the rule of the mob is over and the descent into pure anarchy now begins. The Jester claims they will become the better class of criminals that Bikini Bottom deserves, a criminal class that does not care about money and power as ends in themselves and only wants to cause chaos and destruction of the whole social system. Following the death of his love Sandy Cheeks, SpongeBob goes into deep mourning until Mermaid Man, Barnacle Boy, and Gary speak with him to encourage him to remain the Bat Sponge and not give up. Barnacle Boy assures SpongeBob that there are plenty of fish in the sea, causing Mermaid Man to slap him for his insensitive comment and causing Barnacle Boy to ask if it was too soon. Mermaid Man instead says that a true hero never gives up until the villain has been defeated. Gary says that just as the mission of the Bat Sponge is to avenge the death of SpongeBob's parents, so his final mission must be to stop the Jester to avenge the death of Sandy. With their words of encouragement, SpongeBob agrees to remain the Bat Sponge forever, even after he stops the Jester. The fat starfish and former friend of SpongeBob, Patrick Star, has secretly been stalking SpongeBob from afar after becoming suspicious that he could be the Bat Sponge fighting crime at night because of how often SpongeBob canceled their evening sleepover parties. Patrick now has a large secret collection of photos that definitively prove that SpongeBob is the Bat Sponge. Wanting the chaos of the Jester and Bat Sponge to end, Patrick prepares to expose Bat Sponge's secret identity to the Fish News media and Fish News reporter Perch Perkins. However, Jester hijacks the news report and threatens to blow up a retirement home unless Patrick is killed since Jester has realized the end of Bat Sponge would mean less fun conflicts for them. A mob of fish citizens forms to hang Patrick by fishing hook. As Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy work together to evacuate the Shady Shoals retirement home, which is actually located over the secret Mermalair cave of the Bat Sponge. They also watch over the injured and unconscious Richard Bottomfeeder since the heroes believe many of the corrupt fish cops can no longer be trusted. However, disguised as a nurse, the Jester infiltrates the retirement home, uses a large circus baton, and knocks out the old heroes. While the police fish evacuate retirement homes and Larry struggles to keep Patrick alive, Bat Sponge arrives and allows Patrick to enter his superhero vehicle to escape, causing the traumatized and grateful Patrick to thank his old friend and apologize and causing SpongeBob to agree they can become friends again if Patrick can keep his secret safe. The grateful Patrick agrees and becomes an ally of Bat Sponge. At the retirement home, the Jester repeatedly slaps both sides of Richard's half-burned face to wake him up. Jester reveals to the disillusioned Richard, mourning the death of Sandy, that he is a mere agent of chaos, who shows authorities how pathetic their attempts to control society and the world really are. Jester points out the moral hypocrisy of the social order, which views some people, like clownfish, insane fish, and street thugs, and even Richard and Sandy themselves, as expendable as part of its plans and others as indispensable, like Mayor Plankton, Bat Sponge, and Police Chief Larry. By introducing anarchy and upsetting the established social order, Jester introduces the fairness of chaos and punishes the powerful schemers. Unlike the so-called schemers, Jester claims he is a fish without a plan, like a crazy fish chasing human boats who would not know what to do with them even if he caught them. Causing Richard to agree Jester is just a madman unleashed by the mob and making the corrupt fish cops and the incompetent police chief Larry ultimately responsible for his disfigurement and Sandy's death. Jester persuades Richard to become the villainous, two-faced vigilante of vengeance, Double-Face, to take the law into his own hands and avenge Sandy. After flipping his scarred patty to decide the Jester's fate with a grease gun, the coin lands on the clean side, causing Double-Face to abide by pure chance and to spare the Jester's life. The Jester then abducts the unconscious mermaid man and barnacle boy and escapes in a clown boat car with them. After the Jester's escape and Double-Face's departure, fish bomb squads arrive at Shady Shoals and cautiously remove a Jack-in-the-Box toy left behind by the Jester, which they believe is a bomb. However, when the Jack-in-the-Box opens and everyone screams, nothing happens, causing them to realize in relief that the bomb is a fake and a sick joke from the Jester. Having become the villain Double-Face, Richard defers his decision-making to his now half-scarred, two-faced Patty, which gives everyone a fair 50-50 chance to live or die. Using a list of their names provided by the Jester and wielding his grease gun and his patty, Double-Face secretly kills the corrupt fish officers involved in Sandy's death. Public panic grips the sea creatures of the city as Jester sends a threatening video to the media. The video shows the captured Perch Perkins being repeatedly hit with pillows across the face by masked clownfish, who mock him and laugh as Perch is forced by the Jester to announce that an underwater recovered ticking nuclear bomb left behind by the American human navy is secretly planted in the city and will detonate at midnight if everyone does not leave by midnight. Law and order breaks down as fish citizens loot stores and stampede to try to escape the city. While Police Chief Larry announces the threat is probably just a bluff and dark joke, nobody heeds his call for public calm. During the panic, Bat Sponge and his allies Patrick and Gary consult on where to find the Jester. Bat Sponge realizes the Jester must be bluffing simply to cause chaos, which has worked. They realize both Richard and the dynamic duo of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy are missing, so they know the Jester must be responsible. Patrick deduces that the clown Jester might be hiding out at the long-abandoned and closed Glove World amusement park, since it was home to the now-defunct City Circus and once full of clowns. Bat Sponge realizes Patrick is a genius and must be right. While the police fish are preoccupied with imposing martial law and conducting evacuations due to the nuclear threat, Bat Sponge in the Black Boat mobile races to Glove World. At Glove World, the Jester is surrounded by clown mask-wearing clownfish thugs and speaking over a loudspeaker. Inside the love ride known as the Tunnel of Glove, there are two boats. Both boats are armed with small cannons and cannonballs. The tunnel is covered in ticking dynamite explosives. One boat contains Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, while the other boat is full of captured sponge and fish copycat vigilantes. The Jester announces that the captured heroes are going to be part of a filmed social experiment that Bikini Bottom will see once they realize the nuke threat is a joke, bluff, and distraction. The experiment will show if all heroes can be corruptible under extreme circumstances to prove true morality is an illusion. Jester says the dynamite will detonate at midnight, only 10 minutes away, if both boats refuse to sink each other. However, if one boat sinks the other boat to save itself, then that boat will be allowed to escape first. While the copycat vigilantes immediately begin firing their cannonballs to sink the other boat and to save themselves, The panicked but moral mermaid man and barnacle boy refuse to fire back and desperately paddle their boat to try to escape the tunnel before the bombs go off. Bat Sponge finally arrives in his vehicle and uses fish nets that shoot out of its guns to capture many clownfish thugs. Bat Sponge then exits and easily fights and subdues the remaining thugs as the Jester flees into the Hall of Mirrors. Bat Sponge chases after the villain. Inside the Hall of Mirrors, Bat Sponge barely avoids many trapdoors that suddenly open beneath his feet. Jester uses a microphone to speak to him as Bat Sponge searches the mirror maze for the villain. Jester asks Bat Sponge why he can't see the world for the bad joke it is, a world full of pointless pain and suffering that the only rational response is to go insane and laugh at and embrace the chaos. Jester promises that his social experiment will prove all fish are monsters beneath the surface, making morals an illusion and making anarchy the natural state of things. Jester tells Bat Sponge that he has proved Bikini Bottom and everyone in it is just one bad day away from his form of moral nihilism, anarchy, and insanity. Jester says he had a bad day once that made him what he is and made him realize the world is a bad, purposeless joke. The villain deduces the hero also had a bad day that made him go crazy, play superhero, and dress up like a bat. The furious Bat Sponge angrily slips up and announces he is avenging the death of Sandy and his dead parents because the world only makes sense and justice is only served when you force it to be. Bat Sponge says both he, Mermaid Man, and Barnacle Boy will prove moral codes can be fixed. Good does exist even in extreme circumstances, and not everyone is corruptible like the Jester. However, the Jester maniacally laughs as he realizes and announces that he killed two sponge parents, Harold and Margaret SquarePants, when he also killed Mr. Krabs. So the Jester knows SpongeBob is Bat Sponge, and he is responsible for creating the hero. Bat Sponge is shocked by the revelation and finally finds the Jester. Bat Sponge begins brutally beating the Jester to a pulp, even hitting him in the groin repeatedly, to finally get revenge on the clownfish who killed his sponge parents. The Jester suddenly pulls out a Krabby Patty poisoned with laughing sauce and stuffs it into SpongeBob's mouth, causing the hero to laugh uncontrollably. Jester encourages the hero to laugh louder as the villain uses a long circus baton to brutally beat up the hero, including mercilessly smacking his head multiple times. Bat Sponge finally administers medicine to himself that suppresses his laughter, enabling him to finally recover, break the villain's baton, and defeat the Jester. As a loud alarm clock rings and hits midnight, the two boats barely escape the tunnel of glove as the bombs explode, allowing Mermaid Man, Barnacle Boy, and the vigilantes to survive. Holding back tears, Bat Sponge refuses to kill the Jester, tells him he forgives him, but will not forget what he did, and announces to the defeated Jester that not everyone is as evil and ugly as him, as proved by the heroes who refuse to kill their enemies. As a swarm of police boat cars arrive on the scene, having realized the nuke threat is a bluff since it is midnight and having been tipped off by the Bat Sponge texting his location to Police Chief Larry, Bat Sponge assures the villain that he will be back in Wacko Asylum forever. The Jester responds that he thinks the conflict between Bat Sponge and Jester, order and chaos, will last forever. The villain finally reveals that, even though the heroes proved they are not easily corruptible, that Richard Bottomfeeder has been corrupted into the villainous two-faced vigilante Doubleface. Realizing Police Chief Larry and his family might be in danger from Doubleface, who is probably holding them hostage at the destroyed Krusty Krab where Sandy died, Bat Sponge leaves the Jester trapped in a fish net as the many fish cops surround and arrest the maniacally laughing villain. Meanwhile, Police Chief Larry, having received a call from Doubleface revealing he is holding his adopted whale daughter Pearl, the orphan daughter of the deceased Mr. Krabs, hostage, arrives at the destroyed Krusty Krab restaurant where Sandy died. Richard attacks Larry from behind with a grease gun shot to the back, burning Larry's back and causing him to drop to the floor and drop his gun in pain. Doubleface takes the gun and then holds the grease gun and flips his patty to decide Pearl's fate. Doubleface blames Larry for the death of Sandy by allowing corrupt cops in his force, but the injured and unarmed Larry begs Doubleface to punish him and free the innocent Pearl. Larry says he will let chance and chaos determine her fate, like it did with Sandy, since the world is full of tragedies like Sandy's death because it is ruled solely by chaos and chance. Doubleface flips the patty and it lands on its scarred face. Before he can shoot hot grease at Pearl to turn her into mere whale blubber, that Sponge suddenly arrives, sneaks up like a ninja, and punches both sides of Doubleface's so hard that the villain goes stumbling into the kitchen, where he accidentally slips on the greasy floor and falls into a barrel of boiling hot grease, turning him into fried fish. That Sponge is horrified that he accidentally killed Richard and broke his one moral rule like the Jester wanted, but Police Chief Larry assures him he did the right thing, saved Pearl's life, and did it on accident, not purpose. As Larry and Bat Sponge wonder what they should do now that Richard is dead and killed multiple fish cops in vengeance, Bat Sponge finally remarks the dead Richard is the hero martyr that the city needs, and the truth of his corruption will harm the fish of Bikini Bottom who need hope and will end the legal case against the imprisoned fish mafia thugs. Bat Sponge agrees to take the blame for Richard's death and Doubleface's murders and persuades Larry to conceal the truth for the good of the Sea City. Inside the Mermalair, Gary secretly burns an undelivered letter from Sandy to SpongeBob that says she will choose Richard over him because she doubts there will ever come a day when Bikini Bottom no longer needs the Bat Sponge. The sea creatures of the city mourn Richard Bottomfeeder as a true public hero, the moral white knight of Bikini Bottom killed by the dark knight of the Bat Sponge. The police fish destroy the bat signal and launch a manhunt for the Bat Sponge, who flees with his bat boat mobile into the dark night. As Bat Sponge escapes, Larry tells Pearl, Bat Sponge is the hero that Bikini Bottom deserves, but not the one it needs right now. So we'll go fishing for him. Because he can take it. Because sponges are very resilient. Because right now, he's not a hero. He's a silent guardian, a watchful protector, a dark knight parody. The end.